The movie's premise is set in 2048. Several cars travel across the Atlantic Ocean to the NATO operating base. One of the cars pulls up in front of a mansion. A woman shows a family of 3 inside the mansion, which has become their new home. Rick Jansen, his wife, Dr. Abigail Jansen, and his son Lucas are taken aback by the lavishness of the place. When the 3 are standing in front of their private swimming pool, Lucas inquires as to Rick's destination. Rick directs him towards the sky. The camera pans out to show similar houses in the neighborhood, implying that the people who arrived in the other cars were assigned similar houses. The next morning, Professor Martin Collingwood pays the family a visit. The couple is pleased to see him. Rick expresses gratitude to the professor for selecting him for the mission, but the professor reminds him of the risks involved. The professor thanks them for their service and departs. Cut to a NATO conference. The professor speaks in front of a group. By 2048, the Earth's natural resources have been depleted. People begin to fight for whatever resources remain, and international wars become common. He predicts that in 10 years, half of the planet will be uninhabitable, and in 15 years, half of the world's current population will starve to death. Humans' time is running out because they have outgrown their homes. The professor claims that their children will see the end of the world. Despite all of this, he claims that there is hope, and that hope is Saturn's largest moon, Titan, the only other body in the solar system with an atmosphere, making it the most habitable body in the solar system after Earth. However, it is not ready for human habitation. As liquid methane rains down on the celestial body, the atmosphere becomes saturated with nitrogen and the temperature plummets. The professor claims that space science says Titan is uninhabitable for humans, but he takes a different approach. Instead of attempting to make the planet habitable for humans, he intends to use modern genetics to help people adapt to the planet's natural conditions. As a result, Rick and 13 other members of the team have been chosen to be experimented on in order to help them adapt to Titan's environment. He claims that with minor changes to their bodies, they will be able to breathe nitrogen in the air and survive Titan's cold. Everyone there is aware of the dangers of the experiment, but they are willing to risk their lives for future generations. Their main goal is to establish Titan as humanity's new home planet. The group was chosen for this task from 5,000 people in 16 different countries based on their survival skills. One person at the convention claims that the process is a forced evolution in which none of them will survive, but the others claim they are aware of the risks. Following the convention, the group is assigned key cards and taken to a lab. Dr. Freya Upton, the experiment's assistant, administers Rick a shot and informs him that he will receive over 300 shots in the coming week. The shots are intended to train them to burn nitrogen for energy rather than oxygen, as the oxygen level on Titan is only 5% compared to 20% on Earth. Cut to their mansions, all 14 volunteers and their families have been assigned lavish homes next to each other, so Abigail invites everyone to a barbecue weekend. Everyone dances, eats, and drinks together. This is the last time they will be permitted to consume alcohol, so they enjoy it. Rick helps Abigail get to their room after the party because she is drunk, but he starts coughing violently before they can. Abigail helps him and notices that he is feverish. She administers some medication and puts him to bed. In the following experiment, volunteers are required to sit underwater for as long as possible. The last 2 people inside are Rick and a girl named Tally. The 2 have been underwater for 31 minutes. Everyone outside is pleased and surprised that the experiments were successful. Tally begins to suffocate and emerges after 39 minutes, but Rick remains trapped inside. His vital signs appear to be deteriorating, so everyone becomes concerned. However, Rick begins swimming across the pool at high speeds, demonstrating his progress. Everyone cheers and claps for him. He's been underwater for 42 minutes. Rick tells his son Lucas about Titan's situation as a bedtime story. The child is overjoyed to learn that his father will be able to live on another planet soon. Rick then joins his wife in the pool, where she notices that the nerves on his back are prominent. She chalks it up to a side effect of the shots he's received, but she's concerned about him. As time passes, Abigail and Rayanne, the wife of another volunteer, become friends. Rayanne explains that she didn't want her husband to come here, but he doesn't listen. Rick undergoes surgery that day. Abigail, a doctor, reads the book they were given, which contains all of the procedures Rick must go through. She is relieved to see that everyone is safe, She wakes up at night and notices Rick is not in their bed. She goes to the kitchen and notices him applying ice to his body. He claims he was burning in their bed. Abigail brings out a bucket of ice, and Rick dips his hands in. He asks his wife to do the same, but she brings her hands out, unable to bear the cold. Rick then claims he cannot feel the cold. He has adapted to Titan's cold temperatures. In one experiment, the group is forced to swim underwater because the environment is filled with methane gas, as it would be on Titan. Then, they are forced to run around a field for as long as they can while breathing methane and nitrogen. They repeat the same exercise for several days. The group is in the changing room when Rick notices a lot of his hair falling out. Tally checks to see if it's true and pulls a lump of hair out of his head. Just then, one of the female volunteers vomits blood and collapses on the ground, struggling. The others try to help her and contact the authorities. Dr. Freya attempts to help her, but she dies on the ground before she can do anything. The group is shocked as the harsh reality of the experiment begins to emerge. That night, everyone gathers at Rick's house to discuss the situation. Abigail notices all of the volunteers' nerves becoming prominent for a few seconds before disappearing, but no one else seems to notice. Rayanne and her husband are outside in the pool. Her husband has been panicking as a result of the death. As the others talk, he hits Rayanne in the face and loses control. The others rush to help the girl and restrain the man. His brain hasn't handled the experiments well. The next day, Dr. Freya visits Rick to check his vitals. She claims that the girl who died had kidney stones, which altered the experiments and caused her death. Rick is constantly vomiting blood at night. Abigail takes a sample and investigates it herself. While closing the doors, she notices a light blinking on the walls and realizes they are being watched. Rick is in the swimming pool when his skin begins to peel and float. Later, while they were sleeping, Abigail noticed Rick's back had also peeled. The next morning, Abigail takes the sample to the lab, where she discovers several compounds that were not mentioned in the book. Rick undergoes eye surgery at the lab that day. It is to help him see through the darkness. He returns home from surgery, but is rushed back to the hospital when his eyes begin to bleed uncontrollably. Abigail confronts the professor and accuses him of failing to provide complete information about the procedure. She confronts him about the cameras, which he says are for security reasons. He dismisses and sends her home. As soon as she gets home, she notices large army vans arriving at Rayanne's house. She rushes to see what's going on, but a soldier stops her. Just then, someone throws Rayanne out the window, and her lifeless body lies on the front porch. Rayanne's husband has completely lost control as a result of the experiments. One night, Abigail steals Rick's keycard and sneaks into the facility. She finds the volunteers' medical records and discovers that the girl who died did not have kidney stones. The professor and his team are in a meeting with NASA. The professor is chastised for conducting forced evolutionary experiments without sufficient evidence or ethical justification. He is threatened with having his business shut down. When the professor pays Rick a visit at his home, he informs Abigail that he does not yet know the results of the experiments, but they cannot go back now. The subjects will be transformed into a new species of humans known as Homo titanians, which will be distinct from Homo sapiens. However, because everyone evolves differently, they are unsure what Rick will become after the experiment is completed. Later, Rick removes the bandage from his eyes and is surprised to see everything, even in the darkness. His eyes have evolved. The next day, they perform critical surgery on the subjects, but everyone dies except Rick and Tally. The two now bear responsibility for humanity's future. Abigail is brought to the facility following the surgery, and she is surprised to see her husband transform into a completely different creature. But it is clear that he still remembers them. They have completely transformed into Homo titanians. They can hear humans talking but cannot respond because they communicate at a low frequency that is undetectable to normal human ears. Rick arrives home that night and accidentally hits Abigail. Later, while swimming, he hears a loud thud from outside. Tally has come to see him. She is accompanied by several guards who approach the house. It turns out she killed her husband. The soldiers sedate Tally and attempt to capture Rick, but he easily kills them all with his newfound power. He only stops when Abigail asks him to. The officials then transport him to the facility and place him in a glass cell. Rick is now ready to be sent to Titan, but his emotional attachment to Abigail and Lucas prevents him from going. So the professor asks Abigail to inject him with a compound that will erase his memories. Abigail agrees and gives him the shot. Rick shakes his head, implying he does not want to forget her. Abigail exits the cell, grabs Lucas and Dr. Freya, and flees. It turns out she gave him a different compound to help him escape. Rick pretended to be unconscious before killing a soldier. The others are alerted, but his evolved abilities allow him to escape quickly. Rick meets his wife and son in one of the labs, but is soon surrounded by soldiers. The professor informs Abigail that Rick's evolution is irreversible, and he cannot return to human form. His only option for survival is to travel to Titan. Abigail finally agrees to let her old husband go for the sake of humanity's survival, realizing that she has completely lost him. In the following scene, we see them in an airplane. Rick is in a body bag, being transported to Titan. A few months later, the professor was arrested for using unethical methods. Abigail and Freya have taken over the Titan II facility. Lucas summons his mother outside to look at the clear night sky. Rick is standing on the Titanian Mountains, somewhere in the galaxy. He has fully adapted to the environment. He spreads his webbed arms and flies through the sky. All right, that's a wrap for today. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. It really helps the channel. Leave a comment with your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching and see you next time.